Today I thought I'd do a short video on sightings that people have shared with me about the smaller hairy man. Different names all throughout Australia, depending on what region you live in. But one of these, I was there when it happened. But most of these have been disclosed by people, maybe since about 2007, 2008. So this is, again, just for research purposes for you. I'm not going to tell you what they are or what to think. I'm just going to share with you the stories that people told me. One of the first ones was in 2008. A man named Scott shared with me that he was driving down the Monaro Highway, which is in New South Wales, I think heading down towards Cooma, sort of heading down towards those southern areas. And he said, I just need to tell you because I know you look into this stuff. He goes, there was this thing on the side of the road. And when we got closer to it, he goes, it looked up and he goes, it was like an Ewok. Like in Return of the Jedi. He goes, no, I'm not joking. Like he goes, this was like a little hairy person, but to me it looked like an Ewok, and it was just kind of just off the road and sort of in, not a culvert, but just down the side. And he goes, and we got a really good look at this thing. We went past it, we slowed down, the lights are on it, and we just kind of looked at each other and we just kept going. So that was on the Monaro Highway. A lady who we call Auntie Tiny from Burke, someone I know really well. She told me a story that in Burke would have been sort of late 80s, and I've been to the street and I've actually been to the spot where this happened. There was a telephone booth, which is now one of those really new payphones. No one uses payphones anymore, but obviously some people must. And she said that she heard like a crying like a little child. Her house was over the road. I mean, this is right in town in Burke. This isn't outside of town. This is in town, just slightly outside the sort of main business area. And she thought it was a child crying. So she ran over, and as she got closer to the telephone booth, which was one of the ones that at the time was sort of sealed, you could open the door and get inside, and the door was open. She looked in. It was one of these little gingery type little hairy men. Like, yeah. Yep, and she went back and told her father. Her father said, "Do not go out there. Do not go and see that thing." And Dad brought all the children in, and they waited for it to leave. They got a good look at it, but that was right in Burke. Uncle Aussie Cruz, who is down sort of near Eden, somebody that I've known for years, but unfortunately haven't seen for years as well. He told us that from his perspective, he's part Native American and part Indigenous Australian. He said the little ones, the little people live near the sea in caves. So he goes, they're closer to the coast, they live in the seas. He said the big ones, the really tall ones, live up on mountains. And he goes, and for our people, we wouldn't venture up a mountain. If there was a Dooligal on the mountain, which is sort of the word he used for Yowie, they wouldn't go up there. They'd light a fire. They'd stay around the fire. They would avoid that at all costs. But the little ones, he goes, they're in caves. We went up to that place between Burke, Byrock and Brewarrina, and when we were up there, that was, apart from the uncle up there saying that the big ones had come back while we were there, and we saw the footprints of that ourselves, the little ones were the ones that were running around. So we had people say to us, they go, just before you got here, we were in a camper trailer staying here like 2 weeks before you arrived. And he goes, and mate, they were just outside the camper trailer all the time. They were running around. We saw them. They run between the dogs. The dogs are chained up and they're probably, 50, 60 metres apart in these sort of dog boxes, and they run between them. You hear the dogs barking, and then you hear really quick, like Usain Bolt. And then the other dogs would bark, and they run between the boxes, stirring the dogs up. But they sort of tend to stay almost out of sight. The one that walked between the cars while we were there, I didn't personally see it. The students saw it. They said it was probably, 6.5, 7 foot tall. So it was kind of hunched over, and they sort of they thought it was one of the students, and then they looked at it properly and they went, "That's not even human." So that area is full of stories, but we were there when that one happened. And my mate Big Dan, so we're all in motorcycle clubs. You can see you've got we're all in motorcycle clubs. Big Dan told me a really good story, and this is kind of one of the things that we connect over. Megalong Valley, he was younger, maybe early teens or pre-teens. They were horse riding through the Megalong Valley, which is kind of in the Blue Mountains, and then you sort of head down, and there's a big valley there with a lot of homesteads and sort of areas. And anyway, they were horse riding through there, and they suddenly were just attacked by things throwing rocks at them. And it wasn't just him, it was him and a number of other people. So there's multiple witnesses to this event. And Big Dan, he's big now, he's little N, he said to me when they looked at who was throwing the rocks, he goes, it was these little hairy people. Just like we've described in all these other stories. He said, like, there was all of us were horse riding and we're getting pelted with rocks, and it's these little things that are hiding behind trees and hiding behind bushes and stuff. We could see them and they're moving around. And so that was Big Dan's story. And finally, the final story was one that I heard, I think it's at Bree, but it could be Burke, about a little one, well, call me Yowie or Gingery or whatever you want to call it. A little person was caught, actually captured and locked in the local jail. Now, I'd have to check because this is a few years ago I was told this story. And a local Chinese man, and Australia had a lot of Chinese people back in the late 19th century who'd come out, particularly to work in the goldfields and sugarcane and stuff like that. He said, no, we've got those in our country, possibly referring to like the Yeti type thing. We've got those in our country. It's like a little. We would not lock it up because we would treat that and like it's a person, even though it's not completely human. And he actually let it go. So this thing was in the jail. It was screaming and crying, a bit like Tiny's story in the phone booth. It's crying, it's making all this sound, and it was really disturbing people. And they were thinking about putting it on a train and taking it to Sydney, but this Chinese man actually let it go. And it just kind of took off. So anyway, there's just some stories about the little hairy people of Australia. Do I know what they are? No, absolutely not. Some of my Aboriginal aunties and uncles have showed me photos, and even though I'm not related to Uncle Pete up at Uncle Pete Peckham, he was one that highlighted to me a photo of when I say uncles and aunties, you've got to understand it in the culture, you often get adopted. So that's kind of, I'm not doing the dark emu thing. I'm not claiming all this stuff that you might think I'm claiming. These, but they are my uncles and aunties. Yeah, he showed me a photo where there was all these old from the old days, all these fellas, and then in the corner there's one of these little hairy people that's in there with the kids. It's if you actually Google it, you'll find it eventually. I find every year it's harder to find that photo, and I saved it on a phone. I'm hopeless, so I've got ADHD. I lose stuff all the time. But yeah, that was a really interesting photo, and the Aboriginal elders in particular consider that to be genuine. So anyway, there's just some stories for you. I don't really know the origins. I don't really understand exactly what they are, but I do know that people see them and people do encounter them, and part of what we do is just share other people's stories as well as the things that we encounter. So hopefully that got you thinking. You'll probably find more of that type of stuff on the AYR, the Australian Yowie Research page, or other pages where they have basically documented every sighting in Australia. So good luck with that. Enjoy your day. God bless.